What is up, folks? Addy Ads here. Anakin Skywalker, YouTube's chosen one. I'm here with my co-host on the Pandemic podcast of the Patriots Worldwide, Mr. Shrimpsu, and we are live in our studio in Buffalo, New York. Today we're going to be talking about Julian Assange principally, and I wanted to start just going over the facts of what's been going on with Mr. Assange and his current trial that is going on. Landmark trial in journalism history, and arguably the trial of the century, with the exception of Mr. Epstein's trial that would have been had he not killed himself. So let's just get right into it. We're going to talk about the Iraq war logs. WikiLeaks Iraq war logs exposed some 15,000 civilian casualties. John Sloboda, co-founder of Iraq Body Count, which is an independent, non-governmental organization. Oh yeah, before we continue, let us know how the audio is. We got a new audio microphone setup that we're using one of Shrimp's Audio's microphones. So just let us know how that sounds, please. So John Sloboda, co-founder of Iraq Body Count, which is an independent, non-governmental organization, an NGO, devoted to continuously counting killings of civilians in Iraq, testified today about working with Julian Assange and WikiLeaks on the Iraq war logs, which were released in October of 2010. John Sloboda started Iraq Body Count to give, quote, dignity to the memory of those killed in Iraq, because knowing how loved ones die is a fundamental human need, and to aid in the processes of truth, justice, and reconciliation, end quote. The Iraq war logs are a compendium of 400,000 significant activity reports filed by the U.S. Army, constitutes the single largest contribution to public knowledge about civilian casualties in Iraq. And Mr. Sloboda testified this. Looks like the audio is good. The logs revealed an estimated 15,000 previously unknown civilian deaths in Iraq. Most of these deaths were the results of small incidents, meaning only deaths of 1 to 3 civilians at one time. The kinds of incidents that attract the least reporting, he said in his statement. And this is a tweet from Iraq Body Count, which you can find on their Twitter at Iraq Body Count. WikiLeaks' exposure of civilian casualties played possibly the most important role in catalyzing public opposition to both wars. The British NGO, Iraq Body Count, so they're out of the United Kingdom, had been doing very good work on this, but WikiLeaks added hugely to that. As part of the redaction process, WikiLeaks invited Iraq Body Count to join the media partners and be given pre-publication access to the material. Julian Assange imposed a, quote, very stringent redaction process in order to protect named sources from potential harm. Sloboda explained that because the necessary redactions would have taken a team of hundreds to do this manually, an automated process was developed to scan the files and redact every word that wasn't in a standard English dictionary to automatically remove any names. Then the files were scanned to remove occupations like doctor or driver so as to further protect identities. Redacting the logs took weeks, according to John Sloboda, calling it a painstaking process. The other journalists in the partnership wanted to hurry to publication. There was considerable pressure on WikiLeaks because the partners wanted to publish faster, according to John Sloboda, but WikiLeaks continuously rejected this pressure, insisting that redactions must take place. Some media partners had redacted a small number of documents by hand and wanted to publish those first, but Assange and WikiLeaks wanted the entire database to be released together. Many people who use the war logs would agree they were over-redacted, Sloboda said, but the agreed stance was to be overcautious first and then to take a closer look afterwards, to possibly unredact something if it was agreed it could be revealed. On the importance of the releases, Sloboda writes in his witness statement that 10 years on, the Iraq war logs, quote, remain the only source of information regarding many thousands of violent civilian deaths in Iraq between 2004 and 2009. And it is Iraq Body Count's position that civilian casualty data should always be made public. While the U.S. government often claims that the disclosure could have endangered Iraqi or U.S. lives, it has never been able to demonstrate that a single individual has been significantly harmed by the release of these data. This is not least because the war logs were highly redacted prior to their release by WikiLeaks. It could well be argued, therefore, that by making this information public, quote, Manning and Assange were carrying out a duty on behalf of the victims and the public at large that the U.S. government was failing to carry out. And speaking on an individual called Carrie Schenkman, who is an American human rights attorney and constitutional historian, Carrie Schenkman, Schenkman, Carrie with an E and a C, and he is writing a book on historical analysis of the Espionage Act to testify by video link from the United States. Mr. Schenkman declared the Espionage Act is an, quote, extraordinarily broad political offense. He has worked for the late Michael Ratner, President Emeritus at the Center for Constitutional Rights, which advised Julian Assange and WikiLeaks prior to Ratner's passing. Schenkman's witness statement gives a history of the use of the Espionage Act created in 1917 under President Woodrow Wilson, in what Schenkman refers to as, quote, one of the most politically repressive periods in the nation's history. The act was used against a range of dissidents, and Schenkman says he provides this history to show how widely it can be used and to show that the act is extraordinarily broad and one of the U.S.'s most divisive laws. Mr. Schenkman further explained two key points about the law. First, it is written to criminalize the disclosure of not sure, quote, national security information, but all national defense information, which means it encompasses even information that isn't classified. And second, the act does not include a public interest defense, meaning defendants can't argue that disclosures were made to benefit the public. In 2015, Schenkman wrote about the use of the act against whistleblowers in an article for the Huffington Post. Whistleblowers have a human right to a public interest defense, and hacktivists do too. Not a single one of those prosecuted has been allowed to argue that their actions served the public good. Whistleblowers cannot argue that their actions had positive effects, known as, quote, public interest defense. The United States disclosures to the press as acts of spying, no matter what good they lead to. Also in 2015, Schenkman and Ratner wrote, CCR to UN, whistleblower protections must include publishers like WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. The ultimate effect of prosecuting and censoring publishers is the unacceptable chilling on the free flow of information, rights to access information, and freedom of expression. Because of just how controversial the Espionage Act is, Schenkman testified there has never been a prosecution like the one against Assange. There has never in the century-long history of the Espionage Act been an indictment of a U.S. publisher under the law for the publication of secrets. Accordingly, there has never been an extraterritorial indictment of a non-United States publisher under the Act. Therefore, Schenkman told the court that journalists have generally felt comfortable that their activity was protected. This changed briefly in 2010 when the Obama administration began using the Espionage Act against sources and even named journalist James Rosen with an E, as an unindicted co-conspirator in an Espionage Act case, and fellow reporters began to get nervous. But Schenkman says that anxiety was dialed back when the Attorney General Eric Holder announced upon his resignation in 2014 that naming Rosen as a co-conspirator in that case was his greatest regret in office. But the Trump administration's escalation from prosecuting the sources to prosecuting the publisher has signaled a major shift that carries a widespread, chilling effect. Schenkman writes, "What is now concluded by journalists and publishers generally is that any journalist in any country on earth, in fact any person, who conveys secrets that do not conform to the policy positions of the United States administration can be shown now to be liable to being charged under the Espionage Act of 1917. On cross-examination, prosecutor Claire Dobbin attempted to get Schenkman to concede that in 2015. He felt that the U.S. may still bring charges against Julian Assange. This is part of the prosecution's effort with most witnesses to attempt to undermine the 2013 Washington Post article reporting that the Obama administration would not be bringing Espionage Act charges against Assange. This is a key factor in the extradition proceedings because the US-UK extradition treaty bars extradition for political offenses, and a clear decision not to prosecute by one administration followed by a 180-degree shift to a decision to prosecute by the following administration would appear plainly politicized. And that is exactly what happened, which we saw with the transition from the Obama administration to Trump's administration. Schenkman testified that he took the 2013 article at face value, that he believed the Obama Department of Justice, and that they had decided not to prosecute. Asked about the investigation into WikiLeaks continuing across administrations, Schenkman said, "Oftentimes, these things are left to simmer, but ultimately an indictment wasn't brought." Furthermore, he argued, if Obama and Eric Holder truly wanted to prosecute, wouldn't they have been eager to do so? Wouldn't Obama have wanted to write in his memoirs that he was the one to prosecute WikiLeaks? Asked again about the ongoing investigation, Schenkman said that using the Espionage Act like this is extremely contentious, something he thought would be an apt assignment for law school students to debate and explore because it's so contentious. "I've never thought we would see something like this indictment," he said, adding that most legal scholars agree that this use of the Espionage Act is truly extraordinary. Furthermore, he said, the way the charges are framed and the timing of the indictment really point to a highly politicized prosecution. He began to comment on the politicized nature of the way the 3 pure publication charges are written, but the prosecution stopped him, saying they would go through the indictment later. In a long back and forth, the prosecution attempted to get Schenkman to comment on agreed legal principles in the United States. Schenkman repeatedly explained that these are contentious issues dependent on the circumstance. "Do you agree that a government employee who steals national security or national defense information is not entitled to use the First Amendment as a shield?" Dobbins asked. Schenkman said that it's a highly fact-specific inquiry and it depends on what you mean by steal. For example, Schenkman noted that the Ninth Circuit Appeals Court recently ruled on Edward Snowden's NSA disclosures, and they credited Mr. Snowden with those disclosures even though he was a government employee accused of stealing these things. Schenkman and Dobbin had a similar disagreement over the use of hacking. Asked, "Are you saying that hacking government databases is protected under the First Amendment?" Shankman said he'd have to ask what she means by hacking because the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act doesn't actually use the term. Instead, it deals with exceeding unauthorized access. Phrases like crack a password and hack a computer sound scary, Shankman said, but there are many nuances and interpretations to consider. So yes, I think there are ways the First Amendment could be relevant. Failing to get a yes or no answer, Dobbins asks, so shouldn't these matters be decided in a U.S. court? Shankman responded no, saying that his testimony was about the application of the Espionage Act and that whether the way they are written in the indictment against Assange is political. It became clear we would need more than another hour for Shankman's cross-examination and closing questions by the defense, so court was adjourned for the day, and Shankman will return to the stand tomorrow afternoon. So that is the newest in the Julian Assange case. Let's check out comments and see how we're doing here. Thanks for checking in, people. L, Harley, Blunts and Funds. Melissa, how are you? Fire Poseidon. Shout out to Quadrex for checking in. Killing time before SHTF.
That's a good name.
Pocket Power Plant. Quack Girl. Bendover thinks that Assange will never be released.
I don't think so. He's going to be in jail for life. He should have took his chance at a pardon when they offered it to him, I think. But they say that Donald Trump had people visit him in the embassy in Ecuador, and they offered him a pardon and said that if he gave up the source for the hacking for the DNC emails, that he would be pardoned. But he refused that, I guess, to give up his sources. So he's probably going to be in jail forever, I'm guessing. I don't see him getting out.
So he could have given up his source and sold his source out in exchange for immunity?
Yeah, that's what the news is saying, and the White House admitted to it in the news. So he had his chance at a pardon, but he didn't want to take it. He didn't want to give up his source for the hacking.
So it seems that he definitely is a man of principle, it seems.
Well, he's not ratting, I guess. He's not ratting anybody out.
He's not a snitch.
But some people say that he raped 2 women in Sweden. It's hard to tell if that's true or not. Nobody really knows, I guess.
Do you think he did that?
I have no idea. Just like I have no idea if Donald Trump really raped anyone. There's just the accusations. There's no real proof, but it makes them look worse that the accusations are there. If I had those accusations, it would make me look bad. It wouldn't matter if I did or not.
Yeah, it's one of those accusations that you really have a hard time defending against nowadays.
I mean, maybe he didn't do it, but I don't really know. I'm not really sure.
The charges were eventually dropped by Swedish prosecutors, but in my eyes, they were trumped up to basically try to get him in U.S. hands. An easier way to extradite him might be through Sweden rather than through the United Kingdom because of that.
Why Sweden?
Well, I don't know about Sweden's extradition laws exactly. What I read just now said that the United Kingdom will not extradite to the United States for political causes. So
the UK won't?
Yeah, the United Kingdom won't. So
do you think he's going to be in jail in the UK for life then? You don't think he'll get sent here?
I don't know. I have a hard time seeing him being released unless Trump pardons him, which do you think that would happen?
No, because he refused to pardon already. I doubt he's going to get another pardon. Trump is pretty stubborn. He's not going to give him another chance.
Trump already refused him.
And Julian Assange refused the pardon already. He's probably not going to.
Well, it wasn't a pardon though; it was a deal where he had
Yeah,
to rat out his source. So that's a little
he's
different.
not going to rat anybody out. It seems like so.
Yeah, but Trump could just like wave his pen and pardon him. You know, just because he's the president, he can do that.
I don't think he'll pardon like Edward Snowden or Julian Assange. Julian Assange is probably viewed by Republicans as a Democrat or liberal. I'm not sure, but it won't ever pardon him just because of that.
Yeah, and Snowden was just on Joe Rogan's podcast, as Quadrix just pointed out, which is an interview I want to check out. I did see him speak with, I don't know, it was like 2 months ago. It was a Shelter in Place episode with Edward Snowden, basically saying that the foundations for the architecture of oppression are being built upon this pandemic. And I find it shocking that there hasn't been more coverage of the Julian Assange trial. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Shrimp.
In America, there's really no coverage of it, but it seems like in the UK, there's more coverage. I think there's just not any coverage of it because we have these massive fires on the West Coast. We have rioting on a daily basis. Somebody's always getting shot by the police, and the elections are coming up. I think people don't care about it as much as the other things right now. Europe, they're probably covering it more because they're in a better place than America. I don't think there's a conspiracy to not cover it, but he's not, like, the political leaders have decided on both sides he's never getting out of jail. I'm not sure if he's done anything wrong. It doesn't seem like he has. Seems like he just published stuff that people gave to him, which I probably would do the same thing if people sent me stuff like that. He probably shouldn't be in jail, but he will be for life.
Yeah, again, unless he's pardoned, I don't really see him being released. He's just too valuable a prisoner for them, you know. Anybody who has him, really, he's going to be of value to them. So the fact that, you know, I think he's still alive is, you know, a win in and of itself, given what he revealed with those Iraq war logs. And Noam Chomsky, I guess, is helping to head some of the defense for Julian Assange, which is quite interesting because he kind of seems like he hasn't been that spoken out or outspoken about stuff that's been going on.
Well, it's not going to be a fair trial. It's like a sham trial.
You think there's not even going to be a chance that he could get a fair shake in the United Kingdom?
No, it's probably whatever Donald Trump and like Joe Biden and like Boris Johnson want. Those two or those three or whoever else in the UK. It's probably up to a handful of people in like the intelligence communities in the UK and US. Those people will decide his fate. It's not going to be a judge or like his peers that decide his fate. They're not going to leave it up to like 10 random people in the UK. It's going to be decided by like Boris Johnson and Trump, pretty much.
It was a stitch up, says the mobster. Are you referring to the Swedish charges there, mobster?
You don't think the Swedish charges are real? That he didn't rape them, or you don't know?
I think they're trumped up. I think it was made up to try to get a hold of them and to take advantage of the climate of the Me Too movement. That's what I believe. But just some more on Julian Assange in general.
Have the women that accused him of that, have they ever been interviewed before on TV or like
I don't think so.
Spoken about it? I feel like the only way I would really be able to tell if he really was guilty of like sexual assault or rape or whatever is to hear their story or like hear an interview or something from them.
Mm. So Julian Assange, he founded WikiLeaks in 2006. And by providing whistleblowers revolutionary new means to reach the public, WikiLeaks shines a light on government misconduct across the world. Its revelations have repeatedly had global impacts, raising awareness of world events and impacting public debate. Some notable WikiLeaks publications include Collateral Murder, the Afghan War Diaries, Cablegate, and Spy Files Russia. These publications have established WikiLeaks as a leader in modern journalism. While even traditional journalists risk drawing the wrath of those with power, the scope and magnitude of WikiLeaks revelations have drawn the ire of corporations and government officials around the world. For years, governments and other powerful interests have tried to discredit and disrupt WikiLeaks. In 2012, Julian Assange sought and was granted political asylum in Ecuador's London embassy, eventually receiving Ecuadorian citizenship. He did so due to the fear that he would be extradited to the United States and tried for WikiLeaks' role in publishing material leaked by U.S. Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning. In 2019, after 7 years in isolation in the Ecuadorian embassy, those fears became reality. Julian was arrested by United Kingdom police, and in an unprecedented attack on press freedom, the American government revealed it had charged him for publishing government documents documenting war crimes and human rights abuses. For more than a year, Julian has been jailed in London as the United States seeks to extradite him to face charges. With the next phase of his extradition hearing beginning this month in September of 2020, now is a crucial time for concerned citizens around the world to speak up in favor of transparency and speak out against the U.S. war against journalists. Your voice can make a difference. That from AssangeDefense.org/Julian-Assange. And just a list of his supporters. The Assange Defense co-chair is Daniel Ellsberg, who's the Pentagon Papers whistleblower and co-chair of AssangeDefense.org. Alice Walker, who is a Pulitzer Prize-winning novelist, co-chair as well. And Noam Chomsky, as I mentioned, academic, activist, and fellow co-chair of AssangeDefense.org. Also included are Nils Meltzer, UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, Reko Horvath, a philosopher and co-founder of DM25, Oliver Stone, film director, screenwriter, film producer, and author, Agnes Calabard, who is the director at Global Freedom of Expression at Columbia University, and she is also a UN Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial executions. Thomas Drake, whistleblower, former senior executive at U.S. National Security Agency. Alan Rusbridger, British journalist. Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, President of Mexico. Clive Stafford Smith, founder of Reprieve, also a human rights attorney. Edward Snowden, we know who that is. Trevor Tim, executive director at Freedom of the Press Foundation. Brigitte Jones-Dottir, advisor in digital democracy. Ben Weisner, who's the director at the ACLU Speech, Privacy, and Technology Project. Jeremy Schall, investigative journalist. And we got Christopher Peshu, secretary of the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention. Glenn Greenwald, American author, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and attorney. Tor Eklund, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act lawyer. Former leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn. Dr. Swillett Dreyfus, researcher, writer, civil society engineer. Mairead Maguire, Nobel Peace Prize winner. Mary Kostakidis, Australian journalist. And Dunja Mijatovic, Commissioner for Human Rights on the Council of Europe. So quite the power team there, full of the Assange Defense group, coalition. And we are trying to do, everything we can do to help to update that. But we do have, again, this is day 9. Today is the 18th of September, correct? Yes, so let's update on that and just continue right along. So Nikki Hager testified. Looks like he's a New Zealand investigative journalist. He took the stand today to testify about using WikiLeaks documents in his work. Nikki Hager published Other People's Wars: New Zealand in Afghanistan, Iraq, and the War on Terror, and said that WikiLeaks released military and diplomatic files that greatly increased my understanding of the conduct of the war. It would have been impossible to write the book without these confidential and leaked sources. In his written testimony, Hager explained, "It is in general impossible to research and write about war to a useful standard without access to sources that the authorities concerned regard as sensitive and out of bounds, and all the more so with the subject of war crimes. In the case of war, information which is classified is essential to allow journalism to perform its roles of informing the public, enabling democratic decision-making, and deterring wrongdoing." Further commenting on the importance of WikiLeaks releases specifically, Hager compared the publication of the collateral murder video in which U.S. gunmen can be heard saying, quote, "Look at those dead bastards," to the video of the police killing George Floyd and his words, "I can't breathe," for their contribution to, quote, "world opinion about the misuse of state power." Hager worked with WikiLeaks to report on the State Department cables, and he was called to testify about WikiLeaks' redaction process. So similar to yesterday, one of his jobs was to identify any cables that should not be released for reasons such as personal safety of the named people. Hager said he found WikiLeaks staff to be engaged in a careful and responsible process. On Assange specifically, Hager said that he spent a lot of time with Julian, and the person I got to know was very different from the image portrayed in the US media. During cross-examination today, the prosecution sought Hager's opinion on the release of the unredacted embassy cables in 2011. Hager said, "My understanding is that the information came out before WikiLeaks made that decision," referring to the fact that cables were published on Cryptome and it had already been mirrored on several other websites beforehand. WikiLeaks made strenuous efforts to keep it secret, and it was released elsewhere at first. Pressed further about the releases, Hager said that he was glad that the redacted cables were out so long, that there was a 9-month period to warn any informants who could have been named. Because WikiLeaks had first published redacted cables beginning in late 2010, the US government was on notice as to whom it should alert. Although the cables were ultimately published without redactions, that lead time, Hager said, is probably why there were no deaths as a result of WikiLeaks releases. Jennifer Robinson says that Trump offered a pardon for Assange in exchange for sources. Who is a barrister, Jennifer Robinson, she made a statement. The defense read a statement from Jennifer Robinson, again, a barrister in London, who has advised Assange since 2010. Robinson's testimony recounted a meeting she observed between U.S. Congressman Dana Rohrabacher and Charles Johnson in the Ecuadorian embassy. Congressman Rohrabacher made clear that he had come to the embassy on behalf of President Trump, and they would have an audience with Trump upon their return to Washington, D.C. Rohrabacher explained that he wanted to resolve the ongoing speculation about Russian involvement in WikiLeaks' publication of the Democratic National Committee leaks in 2016. He said ongoing speculation was damaging to U.S.-Russian relations, that it was reviving old Cold War politics, and that it would be in the best interest of the U.S. if the matter could be resolved. Rohrabacher explained that information from Assange about the source of the DNC leaks would be of interest, value, and assistance to the president. Rohrabacher proposed that Assange identify the source for the 2016 election publications in return for some form of pardon, assurance, or agreement which could both benefit President Trump politically and prevent U.S. indictment and extradition. Assange did not provide any source information to Rohrabacher, and instead, Assange and Robinson urged the congressman to raise the First Amendment implications of any U.S. indictment with President Trump. The defense revealed this pardon offer to demonstrate the politicized nature of Assange's prosecution. The fact that it could be dropped if Assange provided source information, and the fact that it was brought after Assange declined to provide that information, belies claims of a desire to simply prosecute a crime. Before we continue, let's take a look at comments. Please like and share. And let's continue on. So we're talking about Khaled El-Masri, kidnapped and tortured by the CIA. The defense then summarized a statement from Khaled El-Masri as John Gates outlined in his testimony on Wednesday. El-Masri was kidnapped and tortured by the CIA. El-Masri's statement has been the subject of contention because the prosecution, operating on instruction from the U.S. government, objected to admitting the statement as evidence. Amid debate over whether to hear from El-Masri live by video or to read his statement aloud, the prosecution said, "We see no utility whatsoever in having Mr. El-Masri in court." Julian spoke up from the dock. "I will not censor a torture victim's statement to this court," he said. "I will not accept that." The prosecution ultimately agreed to allow the, quote, gist of the summary to be read as long as it was understood that the prosecution does not stipulate that El-Masri was tortured by the U.S. government. An innocent German citizen, El-Masri was rendered to a CIA black site where he was, explicit warning, people, got some explicit language coming up. An innocent German citizen, El-Masri was rendered to a CIA black site where he was sodomized, force-fed through a tube through his nose, and subjected to total sensory deprivation. And his statement is there, which I may read later. The German state prosecutor issued an arrest warrant for the, as Goetz explained, WikiLeaks documents revealed that the U.S. had pressured the German prosecutor to issue the warrant in a jurisdiction where the perpetrators didn't live, threatening repercussions otherwise. A court ruled his detention and rendition were unjustified, and there has been no justice for the U.S., he said. El-Masri cited U.S. State Secretary Mike Pompeo threatening the family members of any international criminal court officials who cooperate with an investigation into U.S. crimes. Following El-Masri's statement, historian and attorney Kerry Shankman, as we mentioned earlier, continued his testimony on the historical applications of the Espionage Act. Shankman and prosecutor Claire Dobbin continued a lengthy exchange about case law on the Espionage Act. Dobbin read through several rulings on Espionage Act cases, arguing that the act allows for prosecution of journalists, that has been refined by judicial interpretation, and that challenges to its overbreadth have been tried and failed. But Shankman explains that these cases have dealt with government insiders, not members of the media. So the language used in those cases doesn't necessarily apply here. He said here's dispute in the scholarship as to whether these judicial interpretations could be called refinement. In fact, if anything, he said, some of these terms have been broadened, such as the fact that national defense information doesn't just mean classified information, but instead includes anything the government considers sensitive. The prosecution attempted to argue that the use of the Espionage Act has historically demonstrated restraint on the part of the government. But Shankman said he doesn't think any scholar on the issue would agree. Shankman explained that simply bringing forward an indictment under the Espionage Act against a journalist, even if the prosecution isn't successful, combined with the law's breadth and overuse, instills a significant chilling effect throughout the media. The effect pervades beyond journalists too, he noted, because the law is written so broadly that it could be used against anyone who even reads or retweets national defense information. On the common threads running through all attempts to bring prosecution under or against the media, Schenkman said that in all cases, the journalists accused don't support the administration's policies, are revealing misconduct, or are revealing information contrary to what the administration is revealing. Reuters journalist Dean Yates was the other witness statement today, and the defense read portions of a witness statement from Dean Yates, who was the Baghdad bureau chief for Reuters at the time of the incidents depicted in Collateral Murder. In the video taken in July of 2007, U.S. gunmen shoot and kill two Reuters journalists, Namir Noor Eldin and Saeed Kamaj, among other civilians. Dean Yates recounted his efforts to find out what happened that day and the U.S. efforts to stonewall him, including rejecting a Freedom of Information Act request for the video. The military showed him part of the video, but not the whole thing. He explained that Assange's release of the video, along with the rules of engagement accompanying it, proved that the U.S. had lied to him. He said, "When I had first been shown a part of the video in 2007 by the U.S. military, it had been burnt into my mind that the reason the helicopter opened fire was because Namir was peering the corner. I came to blame Namir, thinking that the helicopter fired because he had made himself look suspicious, and it just erased from my memory the fact that the order to open fire had already been given. The one person who picked this up was Assange. On the day he released the tapes, he said the helicopter opened fire because it sought permission and was given permission. He said something like, if that's based on the rules of engagement, then the rules of engagement are wrong." Yates said he found it impossible to grapple with the moral injury of unfairly blaming Namir. He further said, "I was devastated at having failed to protect my staff by uncovering the rules of engagement in the U.S. military before they were shot, and for not disclosing earlier my understanding of the extent to which the U.S. had lied. I was profoundly affected." The U.S. government knows how powerful the video is too. Yates said that the U.S. knows how devastating collateral murder is, how shameful it is to the military. They're fully aware that experts believe the shooting of the van was a potential war crime. They know that the banter between the pilots echoed the language that kids would use on video games. On the importance of the release, to the victims and to the rest of the world, Yates said, "I know Namir and Saeed would have regained forgotten statistics in a war that killed countless human beings, possibly hundreds of thousands of civilians. Had it not been for Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange, the truth of what happened to Namir and Saeed, the truth of what happened on that street in Baghdad on July the 12th, 2007, would not have been brought to the world. What Assange did was 100% an act of truth-telling, exposing to the world what the war in Iraq in fact was and how the U.S. military behaved and lied. The video was picked up by thousands of news organizations worldwide, sparking global outrage and condemnation of U.S. military tactics in Iraq." The Julian Assange hearings will resume on Monday. Let's take a peek. That's the update for today and yesterday. I think there's a strong possibility that WikiLeaks has been compromised just by virtue of the fact that they are so well known, so powerful, and they've been around for so long in terms of the internet age that, I wouldn't be surprised. Working on behalf of Pompeo and not Trump, I could definitely see that. I don't think there are many people that Trump can necessarily trust, if anyone. And I could definitely see the fact that, Pompeo was trying to strike a deal on someone else's behalf, besides Trump, through Rohrbacher, and talking to Assange and his attorney in the Ecuadorian embassy. But a lot of implications for this trial of Julian Assange for the First Amendment, for freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and by extension, freedom of religion as well. So, this is something that affects all of us. It especially affects journalists and people who are supportive of free and independent media, of a free and independent internet. And it's something that, I think should be covered more. And we mentioned earlier, too, how the U.S. media is largely glossing over this. We are seeing some mentioning of it in the media, but it's such a huge trial. You would think there would be more coverage of it. It does seem to be somewhat purposely done when you see what the judge did. Her name is Judge Baritzer. I'm not really sure how to pronounce her last name. Baritzer. Basically disallowed something like 40 independent NGOs and journalists from attending the hearings in person. And the explanation given was basically for security issues and for ensuring a fair trial. But as to why they would disallow that many journalists to ensure a fair trial, I'm not really sure, if that's accurate thinking there or not. But just trying to provide attention and coverage of what's going on with the Assange hearing, I think, is quite important. But what are your thoughts, Shrimp Sue, on this information about Assange and just the state of journalism at large as well? What are your thoughts?
I basically think he should probably be free. I think he probably should have took that plea deal, but he's never going to get out since he rejected that plea deal. It's just bad for journalism, I guess, because America is basically detaining a journalist pretty much for life in prison for making them look bad. I think Assange pretty much knew what he was doing. He pretty much gave up his life to hack and mess with people and publish stuff that people didn't want to be published. He knew what he was getting into. I don't know. I don't think he broke any laws that I can really tell. Do you think he broke any laws?
No, I mean, he didn't even give up his source in exchange for his freedom, or what they said was his freedom through that Pompeo Rohrbacher deal that was offered him. He declined it. So it does seem like he has a higher code of ethics or higher level principles that Julian Assange adheres to and behaves by, or else, we might have seen him sell out his source for some freedom.
So he's not a snitch, but is a chance that he's a rapist.
I don't think he's a rapist.
I know you don't think so. I just have no idea. They probably set him up, but there's a chance that he is like a sicko. I don't know. Seems like probably a setup, but unless I talked to the women or heard what they said, can't be 100% sure.
Yeah, well,
seems political though, I guess.
Yeah, especially in the Me Too climate, it seems like it would be the perfect vector for getting some trumped up charges on someone.
Yeah, he's made bad choices though. He had sex with the women and he didn't tell them that he was not wearing a condom or something, I think is what happened.
Is that what it started from?
I believe that he had sex with without using a condom against their will. I believe that's how what the charges are.
Oh, well, they were dropped regardless. And I also read that the girls apparently weren't even that all enthusiastic about trying to press charges, but the Swedish prosecutors did drop them. So
yeah,
regardless, it failed.
It's kind of sketchy. We don't really know the exact circumstances of what happened with that, and they haven't really came out publicly. So it's hard to tell, but obviously it looks like a setup. But
it feels kind of crazy that it's literally the trial of the century as far as it goes with journalism, right? And despite that, there's almost no coverage of it.
Bigger than Epstein, I think. More important than Epstein.
You think so?
Yeah, because this is like for like freedom of speech and like journalism. Epstein was just like a pimp for rich people, but this was like affects more people, affects journalists and people who publish stuff.
Yeah, I think it affects all of us. When you think about the right to share information, the right to know what the truth is, which is, I think, what we're both about on here, trying to find the truth.
Somebody says he's a political prisoner, pretty much.
Yeah, that's Dolly. He's a political prisoner. What is Mel Shaw, Dolly? Check out Mel Shaw. I did see the documentary on Julian Assange on Netflix. As far as his character profile and his psychology, I think his IQ is 140 plus. I think, has an extraordinary large ego, somewhat narcissistic. But that being said, I also think he is guided by higher level ethics and a higher code of principles and morals that go outside the realm of law.
Maybe.
And outside the realm of self-interest at times as well.
If he didn't rat that person out there, he probably didn't rape anybody. It's just unknown. Like, that seems like he'd be a good person because he didn't rat somebody out, didn't send them to jail, and he took the jail sentence instead of them. So that's pretty commendable. So I don't know, maybe he didn't rape the women because like kind of wouldn't add up.
Yeah, what's unfortunate for me is when I see people that I know and I care about getting manipulated by this and saying that, I don't know, that Assange is like a villain and that he's a rapist. And I think that's what the media wants, is they want to have like people, and this is young people that really young people, younger than I am, but they're still adults, saying this, and they're like thinking he's a bad guy, thinking he's a rapist, believing these allegations, these accusations. What I believe are trumped up charges, which again were dropped eventually.
Did the women drop them though, or did the government drop them?
I think it's up to the DA, even in Sweden. So the government dropped them. This government of Sweden dropped them.
The women initially came forward with the charges against him, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of sketchy how all that happened. And he has done some kind of messed up stuff before. Like, he was a hacker. He's hacked into a bunch of companies and governments and stuff. So he has done like illegal hacking, but
have you ever done something illegal? I'm just kidding. Don't answer that. But what my point is, I think we've all sinned, right? I think we've all lied to our mother at one point. Sorry, Mom. No, but the point is that nobody's perfect, right? So just because he is
perfect.
Okay, Shrimpsy is perfect, but the rest of us, we may have made a mistake every now and again. So just because Julian Assange made a mistake once, I don't think that makes him necessarily a bad guy.
Because that's the excuse they use to shoot everybody. They look at their criminal past and say, well, if you did something bad, then it doesn't matter. We could shoot you instead of arresting you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what they try to do with, what did the Germans call it? Not Nebel.
What is the one guy that got shot? Blake, whatever. What's his name? Blake Shelton.
Blake Shelton is not an artist.
The black guy that got shot when he was walking away from the police, and there's a knife in his SUV or car.
Oh, Jacob Blake.
Yeah, Jacob Blake. Like, they probably didn't have to shoot him because he was just like walking away kind of slow from the police. They say he had a knife. Nobody really knows if there was a knife in his car or not. Like, that guy was like a total scumbag. He like raped people or attempted to rape people in his past, but he probably didn't have to be shot. And then his past didn't really have anything to do with them shooting him.
Yeah, and just because somebody's made a mistake, or even if they are criminal, just speaking outside the realm of Julian Assange, that doesn't warrant summary execution. We
Well, you
have
can't
due
just
process.
you
under
can't
the
just
law.
kill people because they're scumbags.
Right. Yeah.
Otherwise, I'd be killing a ton of people right now. You can't do it. You can't kill scumbags. You have to just arrest them, I guess.
Yeah, you can't kill people, folks. Julian Assange.
He won't be killed, but he'll spend forever in jail.
Journalism, media, freedom of speech, Bill of Rights, Fourth Amendment.
Because America is turning to Saudi Arabia. Because
14th Amendment.
Saudi Arabia, they just take their journalists in the embassy and dismember them. We're one step away from that. Instead of dismembering him, we're just gonna throw away the key. He'll be in jail forever. No more visits from Pamela Anderson for Julian Assange.
Julian Assange, we're going to be covering more on him the next couple of days, folks. His trial resumes on Monday. I'm going to be going back and going at the old updates, just catching up with those. I'll probably finish the Epstein files too if you want to join me for that, Shrimp. Just do some dictation. Otherwise, I can ride solo on that too. But this is the Pandemic Podcast for Patriots, the Great Awakening show with Shrimp Zoo and Addy Ads, Daddy Addy and Shrimp Daddy, bringing you daily geopolitics, news, COVID, science, philosophy, ideas, current events, and more. Anything and everything you guys want us to discuss. We're coming live from Buffalo, New York, here at the Shrimp Castle, the Temple of Shrimp, and Addy Ads and Anakin Skywalker himself are joined by Mr. Shrimp, the host of the Shrimp Castle. So we wanted to thank everybody for tuning in. We are going ham with the videos, talking geopolitics more, as we said. Please give us a subscription so we can start doing some monetizing on our Pandemic Podcast channel. You may be coming by way of Facebook, Twitter, one of my other YouTube channels. Maybe you're coming from Shrimp's channel. But either way, try to link up with our other channels. I'm Addy Ads on YouTube, ADDYADDS. I am also Brand NewTube's chosen one. They have designated me as a Rhodium account, which is one of their premium accounts over on Brand NewTube, a censorship-free, pro-First Amendment video site that is gaining traction. We're trying to get Shrimp over there too.
Yeah, I'm gonna get over there.
We got to get him on the Brand NewTube, and we're gonna try to get a show going, maybe over on Brand NewTube. We'll talk to the folks over there. But if people message the people at Brand NewTube too, and let them know that you guys want to see Shrimp and I on there regularly, we'll still be doing our re-uploads and mirroring there as well, importing and then uploading, just so we have a backup. And on my BitChute too, and then I got a Brighteon. I hit the max number of videos that can be uploaded to Brighteon, but I'm gonna help out Shrimp with his social media too, and get him an Instagram going, and then we'll make a new Facebook for him as well.
It's gonna be on Facebook.
Our Patreons are in the description box below, as well as my PayPal and GoFundMe. I want to thank Mr. Gareth, you know who you are, for the GoFundMe donations, and I want to give a shout out to Kay as well.
Shout out to Guacro too, because I seen her in the comments,
for giving me a. She's like one of my journalism sugar mamas. Kay is, so shout out to Kay. Shout out to Ricky Spanish for tuning in as well. Wakelash, Dolly. Anybody for tuning in from around the world. We got viewers from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Netherlands, New Zealand, Indonesia, Singapore as well.
So people watching us in New Zealand?
Yeah, I got some New Zealanders that watch me.
Nice.
So stay frosty, folks. Until next time.